Today on our AskReddit, we ask teachers of Reddit, what is the biggest holy crap red flag of any kind you've seen from a student? NSFW. This year I had a female student, middle school, who had cut her arm so many times you couldn't really see the skin, just a bunch of bloody, scabby cuts. She hid it well at school as it was winter and the students were all wearing sweaters. We only found out because one of her friends started crying and told me I needed to talk to her immediately. Yeah, this is so sad. When I was in middle school there was a girl who would always have a ton of cuts, not even just on her wrists. It was on her hands and everything too, and she would just tell people, I don't know how these got here, I think my cat scratches me in my sleep. I felt awful looking back a couple of years later that we all just ignored it when it was so obviously self-harm, which we should have recognized by that point. Not a teacher, but had a kid in the second grade with me try to STB my eye out with a pencil. Multiple times. He was obsessed and had to be taken out of class and dealt with on several occasions. Never anyone else either, just me. His reasoning? I had done the same to him in his past life. The stoic, intense look on his face when he said that still gives me chills. Too late to the party, but my mom has taught for near 40 years. The only kid that ever truly scared her was a kid that used to act like he was sucking up until he thought she wasn't paying attention. Case in point was when she gave everyone a Christmas gift before break. He fawned over how great the gift was and that he was cherish it forever. The second he thought she wasn't looking, he threw it in the garbage. He was 9. Side note, I worked with him at a telemarketing place in high school. I remember when he told me that he had been diagnosed as a sociopath. He was eating an ice cream cone while explaining it to me and said, basically, a sociopath means I would feel the same way eating this ice cream cone as I would killing a dog. Eesh. Edit, words. There's a kid in this preschool class, aged 5, that says the most off-the-wall stuff. So far this school year, she has said that her dad is going to come to the school and kick kids and their families, that she has a doll that will come to this other little girl's house and cut her heart out, eat it and cut her legs off, and finally that her dad shoots kittens. At this point, I'm thinking of calling CPS or at least pushing the issue with the school district because there is no reasonable explanation as to why a 5-year-old would be saying these disturbing things. College professor. Guy just a little bit older than me wrote a paper in which he shared a fantasy about beating the SHT out of a younger female therapist for not listening to him about his problems. He was constantly distracting in class, cheated in every way imaginable, and just struck me as off. I repeatedly put in student of concern notices about him, because I really thought something was going to go wrong. Shortly after the class ended he took his newborn kid and ran away to a different state. During my 20 years in the same school, it was just getting worse and worse. Citywide, administrators were shifting accountability onto the teachers in order to preserve their own careers. This was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. After this I knew that teaching, or trying to be a teacher in NYC schools was no longer worth the struggle for me. While I was supervising a class, not mine, during pack-up, clean-up at the end of the day, I caught 2 7-year-old boys on the floor hiding behind some furniture. One was giving a BLWJB to the other boy. Shocked and disturbed, I reported it to my principal and was simply told to call the parents. Incredulous, I asked what I should say, how should I handle this, why me, Amito do this alone? I was directed to be vague about it, and if I wasn't vague and an investigation resulted, then I would be thrown under the bus because it must have only happened on my watch. Of course, the 2 boys were notoriously strange troublemakers for everyone, but nothing prior to this went on record. No one could make the case that the principal had neglected to protect other children from these boys. When one of these boys picked at the gums in his mouth with his fingernails until his mouth was filled with blood and his smile scared the other kids, and his hands were covered in drying blood, he was sent to the nurse to wash his hands and rinse his mouth. The nurse sent him back to class with a note. The parents were told, but acted like it's just another day. Not a teacher but in an outpatient childhood mental health setting, so a little different. A little 5-year-old boy came in and explained how he drew a circle on his 2-year-old sister's side and said, this is where the voices told me the blood is supposed to go. A buddy of mine teaches the special needs class in a high school. For him it was the kid who he'd been told liked to throw things. That wasn't entirely uncommon for his class, but when he noticed the kid was wearing adult diapers, he went straight to the office to review the kid's file. His red flag sense was right, the kid liked to throw shit. My buddy went to OAS and has managed to keep the kid out of his class. That was last week. This week he's been told that the school is still trying to get the kid put in his class anyway. They make money for taking these kids, he's fighting it, but Lord knows which way it will land. My friend teaches and told me this. He had a student who constantly picked at his scabs. He would rip them off and eat them, then lick the blood off his fingers. Then pull alcohol swabs out of his backpack and clean the wound while smiling creepily. He made everyone feel super uncomfortable and grossed out, but no matter what, he wasn't removed from the class. Finally one day my friend comes back from the teacher's lounge to find him using a letter opener under his skin and moving it back and forth, blood everywhere. When asked what he was doing he said his skin itches and it's best to get it at the source. The kid was finally removed from the school. My friend never found out where or what happened to him though. Mom taught for 30+ years, about 10 of them were in a self-contained classroom. So, if kids didn't succeed in the self-contained unit, they were expelled entirely, so worst of the worst. She loved the kids and over that time had only 2 that truly frightened her. The common thread was they had no effect whatsoever. They were never happy, never sad, never jealous, never vengeful. It was just nothing. At least the kids who were angry, frustrated, apathetic, silly, etc. were feeling something. Of those 2 kids, one is now in jail for a long time. She doesn't know what became of the other one. The worst? I had a student with claw marks over her eyes. Like legit looked like someone scratched her eyelid. The whole upper area right under her eyebrow was scarred and it was like too small to have been an animal. Me and a coworker asked about it. She started to get defensive and once a kid starts stammering and making excuses, you gotta make the call to CPS. I got fired for making the call. I apparently hurt the school's standing in the neighborhood because I snitched, and the kid got removed from her family and sent to another state. Another kid had trouble staying up in class. Turned out his house was at the center of a coke bus later that year. Fun times. There was a kid I knew in 2nd grade, he was wild. When we were in the same class together, the teacher would regularly have to call the assistance team, a group of teachers that would restrain unruly kids and were trained on how to do so. He would throw desks, chairs, scissors once if remember correctly. The following year, we weren't in the same classroom but it was a small school so you'd still hear about things. He tripped a very pregnant teacher causing her to go into labor. No idea how he didn't get expelled for that, but the final straw was when he found a rusty pocket knife on the playground during recess and stabbed the student sitting next to him in the stomach with it for no reason. Still wonder what happened to him. Oh, and he sucked his thumb regularly. Edit, assistance team. I meant assistance team. My cousin, currently in 1st grade, had a girl in his class throw a computer tower in their classroom and slapped and punched the teacher as she tried to gain control. To my knowledge, nothing ever happened to the girl because the teacher and the girl's mother are good friends. They don't want to ruin her time at school by reporting the incident. I have seen a lot of behaviors, and they almost all come from a place of not knowing how to get one's needs met and not having good emotional regulation. The big red flag, and the kids you need to be careful around, are the ones who can control themselves just fine, but lack empathy. Once I had a student, 3rd grader who must have weighed more than I do, get mad at me for taking away points from him for bad behavior. Other kids were laughing at him. He very calmly and silently walks up to one of the kids that was laughing, picks up a stack of like 4 pencils that were on his desk and snaps them perfectly in half. Then silently, calmly goes back and sits down. Lol, I guess it wasn't a red flag but it was legit like a horror movie. I teach middle school math. We have a Saturday school once a month for students with failing grades to get extra help in whatever subject. One kid did not want to be there and he was placed in a conference room in the office so he didn't disturb the other kids. So this kid pulled out a tooth. An adult tooth. He pulled it out of his face. It was terrible. Thanks a lot for watching another episode of Today on Reddit. Post in the comments below any stories you have and stay tuned for more Reddit videos.